Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So I wanted to touch upon more on inclusive design. If you remember in the last episode, I spoke about inclusive design, right? And how inclusive design plays a very important role when you're building a solution. Now, I wanted to briefly go into details about how to interrupt the cycle of exclusion, right? Now, the exclusion is a very interesting topic. Exclusion could be, something like I gave an example of a train, right? You have a train. Now, if you don't consider a person with a wheelchair, that's an exclusion, right? You go to any software, right? You build a software. Let's say you build a software for a medical industry, and in that you fail to define gender as say for instance transgender or non or something else, right? uh, that is a kind of exclusion. You build a website, um, which is which serves certain uh, purpose based on a color. You've excluded people who are colorblinded, right? So that's now, like I said, like the exclusion comes from a lot of reasons, right? Cognitive bias is one thing, because sometimes what happens is we live in a society where it's very common to be concerned with what is norm, right? People don't really like to go against the norm because it's the most easiest thing to do, right? The least resistant part. And it's just to confine with, I mean, I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but because it's a human nature to, to feel comfortable in the same like-minded community or group. So if a community or a society has certain bias, so when you are building a solution or software, you will automatically bring that bias to it, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's very important to bring in an expert, so that that cognitive bias don't impact your decision making skills or when it comes to designing a product. Yeah. So that's one thing, right? So this is a trailer example, like in and out. They used a terminology where what is in and what is out, right? This is a kind of a model which looks like a pretty black and white kind of approach, right? Okay, this is in and that is out. This is like a binary logic, which may not work very well because think about it, right? If I give you a solution, right, to build, yeah, let's say a software solution, and you say, all right, I'm going to build a software solution for, let's say, old care people, right? Now, the old care people, you have to consider a few things, right? And let's say you build, you know, a solution to look after the old people in an old age home, and then you have to list a section where you have to mention, let's say, a type of illness that person can suffer. Let's say you mentioned diabetes, you mentioned, say, heart issue, you mentioned liver issue and kidney issue, right? Which is great. And you also mentioned, say, for instance, someone with dementia, which is great. You mentioned all of the stuff. What happens if a person suffers with depression? If you don't have an option for that, you obviously excluded that part, right? So, I'm just giving you a very simple, generic example, but the concept of, inclusion and exclusion plays a very important role. When you wanted to make sure that you want, if you're building a solution which has a potential impact on millions of potential impact when it comes to the usage. So another example, there's a trailer example, right? The trailer talks about an XYZ company decides to make a pen for ladies, right? And now that was when they wanted to go live, right? Lots of people complain, right? This is a gross generalization of what ladies can do or cannot do. So the fail was so product launch was failed miserably. So that's one of the reasons why it's very important, to consider, the five principles, like why we make it, who makes it, how we make it, who uses it, and what we make, right? Why we make it, the motivation of a problem solver. Why exactly? why we want to build a solution to begin with, right? We wanted to build a, let's say, a software for an old age care home facility, then you need to know why we wanted to make it. The reason why you wanted to give better service to people who lives there, right? You wanted to make sure that you get away with conventional paper-based model, so that everything is centralized. So you can get a quick if you know summary of a person profile if you wanted to go and look at it. Obviously, the authorized person, and also you wanted to keep the data stored in a secure place, like for instance in the cloud, with proper encryption or proper security. So that's one way you can consider. And who makes it, right? Obviously, uh, maybe a software developer or maybe a consultant or an architect. Yeah, let's say for the sake of example, architect, a consultant, software developers working together to build it. Yeah, and how we make it, you know, you need to find out the resource available, the software available, the skill set in house, and availability of data, and how they want the data to be stored, and how the data want to be represented. So different options, right? And who uses it? Obviously, the people who are going to use it, like maybe an admin staff, or maybe I say a doctor, or maybe you want an integration with the medical system, so the patient record can get pulled into the system, so maybe a doctor can see it, or maybe admin can see it, or the senior age care coordinator can see it. So yeah, and then what we make, so it's about a software or a solution which solves the problem, right? In this case, you're making a software solution for old age care home facility. And yeah, so it's good to keep this five principles in mind before you build any solution, right? This is a really a common framework you can use to when you wanted to build it, right? um, so yeah, that's you know and also risk of a hero complex, right? Don't try to be hero, right? Like I give an example, like a trailer example of the pen, right? They wanted to launch the pen for ladies, and they assumed that, oh, let's make the job of everything easy, right? uh, and but that kind of failed because some of the ladies got offended. Some of them say, hey, this is not how they should be representing us, so the product launch failed. Another thing, you might have used the autocorrect feature, right, in the phone. I do like autocorrect, but at times I wish autocorrect to just stay mum, because sometimes what happens is, right, it autocorrects certain things to something else, which makes no sense, right? Especially you try to send a text to someone. I have seen, in my personal experience, sometimes autocorrect, uh, you know, autocorrects it to something which makes no freaking sense. So yeah, that's I give a very simple example, but you can relate to something else. When you try to oversimplify things, right? Things can go wrong when you try to oversimplify things based on assumption that, oh yeah, this is what I think the customer might like it. Yeah, that's an assumption, and then you try to oversimplify things based on assumption, which may or may not work, right? So you just have to remove your hero hat and just think from a user perspective, what they're really looking for it. What are the pain points, right? That's the main thing, rather than just assuming that, oh, this is what I think the customer will need it. Let me oversimplify it to make their life easier. So what could happen, instead of making their life easier, you're gonna make it more miserable, which is not really great, right? So you just need to pay attention to that, right? It's you don't really have to have you don't really need to solve every world problem, right? Take one problem at a time and try to solve it in an efficient way so that it is useful for the people who are going to use it. And at the same time, it's not going to exclude any specific user, right? Like I gave an example of age, sorry, not age, the gender stuff, right? If you're going to make a medical software, make sure that it covers the different group of people. Not everyone likes to associate with themselves with the male or the female. You can argue about it as much as you want, like I said, but just for the sake of argument, right? This is the You will find people who don't want to associate with any gender, right? That's their choice, and right, and so we should be, should not be excluding them, right? So that's all I'm trying to get at. And so yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in this episode. Hope you guys have amazing Thursday. And yeah, thank you.